Welcome in, and may God bless your day and the week ahead. We are so thrilled to have you joining us for this deep dive.
We really are. It's a great one today.
It is. Today, we are looking at one of the most epic, highly detailed, and honestly,
Physically exhausting.
physically exhausting narratives in the ancient world. We are unpacking Genesis chapter 24.
And to do this, we're drawing from the historical, cultural, and theological context found in the Holman and NAA Study Bibles.
Right. Really trying to pull out those nuances you might miss on a standard read-through.
Because it's a fascinating text to dig into. I mean, on the surface, it reads like this ancient matchmaking story.
Boy meets girl by a well.
Exactly. But as we look closer at the cultural context of the ancient Near East, you realize it is so much more than that.
Which is the mission of our deep dive today, to explore this monumental journey.
It really is a masterclass in divine providence, active human faith, and what very well might be the most extreme, grueling test of hospitality in recorded history.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we have to set the stage here.
Yeah, the urgency of the situation is palpable right from verse 1.
It is. So we know the timeline. Abraham is 140 years old.
Isaac is 40.
And Sarah, his wife, has been dead for about 3 years.
Right.
So Abraham is looking at his legacy, the covenant promises made to him about his descendants inheriting the land, and he realizes it is time.
Time to secure the family lineage.
Isaac needs a wife. But Abraham draws this massive line in the sand. He absolutely refuses to let Isaac marry a local Canaanite woman.
Right, and the historical context from our study Bibles provides a crucial layer here.
It wasn't just, geography.
No, this refusal wasn't just a geographical preference or tribal snobbery. The Canaanites in the surrounding areas were historically associated with practices and moral codes that completely conflicted with the covenant Abraham had made.
So it was really a matter of total spiritual assimilation.
Exactly. Abraham is deeply concerned about spiritual compromise.
He knows that if Isaac marries into the local culture,
The distinct spiritual identity of his family could be absorbed and lost within a single generation.
the very lineage promised to carry the covenant forward.
Right. So he needs a daughter-in-law who at least shares the foundational ancestral roots of his own family back in Mesopotamia.
So Abraham calls his oldest, most trusted servant, the man who basically manages his entire estate.
The guy in charge of everything.
Yeah. And he makes him swear an oath to travel back to Abraham's homeland to find this wife for Isaac.
But the mechanism of this oath is something we really need to pause on.
We do, because it's wild. He tells the servant to place his hand under Abraham's thigh. Wait, hold on. Put his hand under his thigh. I have to ask, why there specifically?
It definitely stops a modern reader in their tracks.
I mean, it sounds bizarre.
It does. But historically speaking, in the ancient Near East, this was a highly significant, almost fearsome gesture.
Fearsome.
Yeah. Placing a hand under the thigh symbolized deep, binding submission to authority. Because the thigh area is close to the reproductive organs, it was considered a vow, bound by life and posterity.
Oh, wow.
So he is literally swearing on the very lineage he is being sent to protect.
Precisely. If he fails, or if he breaks the oath, he is answering to the entire future bloodline of Abraham.
That is heavy.
It gets heavier. Furthermore, a man's sword was typically strapped to his thigh.
Right.
So swearing this way also carried an implicit threat of force if the oath was broken.
So essentially the servant was taking on a life or death level of commitment?
A massive burden. And he needed to understand the gravity of that commitment.
Because the logistics of the journey he is about to undertake are just daunting.
Extremely.
Relying on the NAA Study Bible notes, we really need to lay out the geography for you here. This isn't a quick trip to the next town over.
Not at all.
The destination is Mesopotamia, specifically a region called Aram Naharaim.
Which translates to Aram of the two rivers.
Right, heading toward the city of Nahor, near Haran. To put that in perspective for you, they are traveling from the region of Canaan all the way up to northwestern Mesopotamia.
Which is how far?
We are talking about navigating ancient trade routes for approximately 900 kilometers.
900 kilometers, and you have to picture what this actually looks like.
It's not a small operation.
No, he's traveling with a caravan of 10 camels. This isn't just two guys walking down a dirt road. A 10-camel caravan is a massive, noisy, highly visible operation carrying significant wealth.
Exactly.
And based on the typical travel speeds of a loaded caravan in the ancient world, they're moving at about 27 to 40 kilometers a day.
So you do the math on that.
It would take roughly 21 days, 3 solid weeks of travel through harsh, potentially dangerous territory just one way.
which highlights the immense faith required from both men.
Truly.
Abraham is sending his most valuable servant, loaded with a fortune and goods, on a month-long journey into the unknown.
And the servant is taking on a task with an incredibly high chance of failure. I mean, he even asked Abraham the obvious question.
What if the woman won't come back with me?
Right, because why would a woman agree to leave her family for a man she's never met hundreds of kilometers away?
It's a huge ask.
Abraham's response is essentially, God will send an angel before you, but if she refuses, you are free from the oath.
So he takes this huge leap of faith into a 900-kilometer expanse.
And this brings us to the servant's arrival.
Yes.
After this grueling 21-day trek, he finally arrives at the well outside the city of Nahor.
It's evening, which is the traditional time when the women of the city come out to draw water.
And the servant does something highly unusual here. He doesn't just ask God to magically point out the right woman.
No, he asks for a very specific, incredibly demanding sign.
He prays that when he asks a young woman for a drink, she will not only give him water, but also volunteer to water his 10 camels.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is a brilliant, highly calculated prayer.
How so?
The servant isn't asking for a parlor trick. He is looking for a specific character trait. Cheesed. Yes, in Hebrew, cheesed means covenant faithfulness, loyal love, or deep practical kindness.
Okay.
By asking for a drink for himself, he's testing for basic cultural hospitality. But by hoping, she volunteers to water the camels.
He's testing for extraordinary sacrificial generosity.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I want you to pay close attention to this next part, because when you break down the actual math of what this test entailed from the Holman notes, it is staggering.
The camel math.
The camel math. We have 10 camels. We know that one thirsty camel, especially after a multi-week journey through arid environments,
It can drink a lot.
they can drink up to 113 liters of water in just 15 minutes.
That is a massive volume of water per animal.
Exactly. And he has 10 of them.
Right.
So when Rebecca steps up and says, I will draw water for your camels also until they have finished drinking, she is volunteering to draw over 1,100 liters of water.
That's unbelievable.
In terms of weight, you are looking at roughly 1,136 kilograms. She volunteered to haul over a ton of water by hand from a well.
It completely shatters how you might traditionally picture this scene.
Definitely.
If you picture these ancient pastoral scenes, you probably imagine something very serene. You know, a quiet conversation by a beautiful stone well.
Just dipping a little cup in the water.
Right. But the reality is intense manual labor. Ancient wells weren't simple faucets.
No.
They often required descending steps to reach the water level, filling heavy clay or skin jars, hauling them back up, and pouring them into a drinking trough.
Over and over again. And the text specifically notes that Rebecca hurried and ran back and forth to the well.
She is basically doing wind sprints with heavy jugs of water.
It reveals so much about who she is. She wasn't just beautiful, as the text notes. She was incredibly strong, deeply generous, and completely unafraid of grueling hard work.
She passed a physical test of extreme hospitality that almost anyone else would have walked away from.
And the servant is just watching her.
In absolute silence, waiting to see if she actually has the stamina and the will to finish the job.
And when she does, when the camels finally finish drinking, he doesn't hesitate. He immediately brings out the reward, the dowry.
Yes, the realization hits him that his incredibly specific prayer has been answered.
So he presents her with highly significant gifts right there at the well.
The bling.
The bling. The text details that he gives her a gold ring for her nose weighing half a shekel and 2 heavy gold bracelets for her arms weighing 10 shekels.
To translate that into a weight you can visualize.
Yes, give us the modern equivalent.
Those gold bracelets weighed about 120 grams of solid gold.
Wow.
In an ancient agrarian society, that is serious life-changing wealth being handed over to a stranger.
And the visibility of that wealth becomes the driving factor in the very next scene.
Enter Laban.
Right. Rebecca runs home to her mother's house to tell her family what just happened. This is where we are introduced to Rebecca's brother, Laban.
And the NAA notes point out a fascinating psychological detail about his introduction here.
Seeing the gold first really frames Laban's motivations, doesn't it?
It does.
The text specifically says that when Laban saw the ring and the bracelets on his sister's arms, then he ran out to the well to invite the man in.
It's an early, Very deliberate warning about Laban's opportunistic character.
Yeah, he's looking at the money.
For those familiar with the broader Genesis narrative, Laban becomes a major, heavily problematic figure later on.
When Isaac's son Jacob returns to this exact same region.
Exactly. The author is planting seeds about Laban's priorities right here. He sees the money long before he cares about the miracle.
So Laban plays the host. He brings the servant into the house, unloads the camels, provides straw, and sits food down in front of him.
Standard hospitality.
Now you have to imagine after a 900-kilometer journey and weeks eating trail rations, a hot meal would be the only thing on your mind.
No, without a doubt.
But the servant flat out refuses to eat. He says, "I will not eat until I have stated my business."
Which is a breach of ancient etiquette, honestly, but it shows his absolute singular focus.
And then he proceeds to recount his entire journey. He verbally lays out Abraham's immense wealth, the solemn oath he was forced to take under the thigh, his specific prayer at the well, and exactly how Rebekah fulfilled the camel test to the letter.
You might wonder, reading through this, why the narrative spends so much time having this servant repeat the entire story we, as the reader, just experienced.
It feels repetitive at first glance.
It does. But this retelling is a brilliant rhetorical and theological strategy.
Explain that.
The servant is acting almost like a prosecuting attorney.
Ew.
He is meticulously laying out the facts to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt to Laban and Rebekah's father, Bethuel, that this entire union is divinely orchestrated.
So he's building an airtight case they cannot argue against.
Exactly. He's removing any opportunity for them to say no.
By detailing the exact prayer and Rebekah's exact response.
He forces them to acknowledge that God's providence is undeniably at work.
And it completely works. Laban and Bethuel are totally cornered by this sequence of events.
They concede entirely.
They say, "The thing comes from the Lord. We cannot speak to you bad or good. Behold, Rebekah is before you. Take her and go."
They recognize the divine orchestration.
So the servant finally eats. They celebrate. He brings out even more silver, gold, and garments for the family, and they go to sleep.
But the very next morning, the reality of the situation sets in.
And things get tense.
The family wakes up and gets cold feet.
Yeah, the delay tactics begin.
They say, let the young woman stay with us a few days, at least 10, and then she may go.
Which is a completely understandable, deeply human reaction.
Totally. They are about to send their daughter and sister 900 kilometers away into the desert, fully aware they will likely never see her again.
10 days to say goodbye seems like a minor request.
But the servant is adamant. He says, do not delay me, since the Lord has prospered my way.
He refuses to lose the momentum of what God has just done.
So the family is at an impasse between their emotional attachment and this stranger's divine mandate. And this leads to a highly unusual moment for the ancient Near East. They say, let's call the young woman and ask her.
Which is a big deal.
Huge. Up until this point, the men have been making all the arrangements, which was the standard patriarchal custom. But here, the family recognizes they cannot force this immediate departure without her direct consent.
This raises an important question. What does Rebekah actually want?
Yes.
They call her in and ask her point blank, will you go with this man?
And her answer is incredibly definitive.
In Hebrew, it's just one word.
Translated in English as, I will go.
There is no hesitation. She doesn't ask for the 10-day delay, just, I will go.
The theological parallel here is striking. Rebekah's willingness completely mirrors Abraham's original leap of faith from Genesis chapter 12.
Oh, that's a great connection.
Think about what she is actually agreeing to. She is leaving her family, her homeland, her entire support system.
To travel weeks through dangerous territory.
To a land she hasn't seen, to marry a man she hasn't met. She's trusting entirely in God's providence and the servant's word.
Her faith isn't a passive acceptance. It's an incredibly bold, active, and immediate choice.
And her family recognizes the historical magnitude of this departure.
As she leaves, they give her a prophetic send-off, a blessing that directly echoes the covenant promises God made to Abraham.
What do they say?
They say, may you, our sister, become thousands of 10,000s, and may your offspring possess the gate of those who hate them.
It's a formal passing of the torch. Rebekah is stepping out of her brother's house and stepping into the role of the matriarch of a new nation.
Her family's blessing acknowledges that her descendants will be a multitude that will overcome their adversaries.
Which brings us to the return journey.
The meet cute in the desert.
Exactly. And we really shouldn't gloss over this return trip because they now have to travel that same 900 kilometers back.
Another 3 weeks on the road.
But this time, the dynamic is completely different. The servant is now responsible for the safety of his master's future wife.
Traveling with a wealthy caravan across hostile trade routes. The tension of getting her back safely would have been immense.
It was a massive undertaking. And while they are making this grueling trek back south toward Canaan, the narrative shifts focus to the man waiting at the end of the road.
We finally check in with Isaac. The caravan is arriving in the Negeb,
A desert region in southern Canaan.
specifically near a place called Bir Lahairoi. The text notes that it is evening, and Isaac has gone out into the field to meditate.
You have to consider Isaac's state of mind here. He has been waiting, probably for months, wondering if the servant succeeded, wondering if he would ever find a wife.
And grieving.
Yes, he is still carrying the profound, lingering grief of his mother's death. 3 years is a long time to mourn, and it suggests a deep void in his life and in the family structure.
He is out in the quiet of the evening, deep in thought, when he looks up and sees the silhouette of the camels approaching.
At the exact same time, Rebekah looks up, sees Isaac walking in the field, and she asks the servant, "Who is that man walking in the field to meet us?"
The servant says, "It is my master." And immediately, Rebekah takes her veil and covers herself.
Culturally speaking, veiling herself was the ultimate ancient matrimonial custom.
Right.
A bride would veil herself before officially meeting the groom, remaining veiled until the marriage was formalized and consummated.
It was a symbol of modesty, respect, and the visual confirmation that the marriage arrangement was sealed. So what does this all mean? The culmination of this massive 1,800-kilometer round trip, the terrifying oath under the thigh,
A ton of water hauled by hand.
the bold leap of faith into the unknown, it all funnels down into this incredibly quiet, intimate resolution.
It does.
The text says that Isaac brought Rebekah into his late mother Sarah's tent. He married her, he loved her, and he was finally consoled after his mother's death.
It's a deeply poignant ending to such an expansive story.
It's beautiful.
Sarah's tent, which had been empty and stood as a physical reminder of loss for 3 years, is now filled with life and love again.
Isaac isn't just receiving a wife to fulfill a contractual lineage quota.
No, the text goes out of its way to explicitly state he loved her. It's a moment of profound emotional healing for him, brought about by the incredible faithfulness of the servant, the grit and courage of Rebekah, and the overarching unseen providence guiding the entire journey.
It is such a stunning narrative when you pull back and look at all the moving pieces.
Truly.
To synthesize everything we've looked at today for you listening, we've tracked an 1,800-kilometer round-trip journey that required immense physical and financial risk.
We've done the staggering camel math.
The camel math, which proved Rebekah possessed the exact character and work ethic needed to be a matriarch.
And we've seen how divine providence doesn't eliminate human effort, it demands it.
Abraham's foresight, the servant's physical exhaustion and highly strategic prayers, Rebekah's fearless agency, all of it was required to move the covenant forward.
It truly is a masterpiece of historical storytelling. And as we wrap up our analysis, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over.
All right, what do you have for us?
Notice how the hero of this incredible journey, the man who engineered the test at the well, carried the wealth, navigated Laban's greed, and safely delivered Rebekah, remains entirely unnamed in this specific chapter.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
We often assume from context it's Eliezer from earlier chapters, but here the text deliberately refers to him simply as the servant.
It's just the servant.
Consider how often the most crucial turning points in history, and perhaps even in your own life, rely on the quiet, faithful actions of people working tirelessly behind the scenes.
People who seek absolutely no glory or name recognition for themselves.
But whose dedication literally changes the course of the future.
The unnamed people carrying the heaviest loads. I love that. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, and may God bless all of you listening. We'll catch you next time.